Judgment has been reserved in President Cyril Ramaphosa's legal bid to overturn a prior ruling which set aside his recognition of Misuzulu kaZwelithini as the AmaZulu King. The monarch's legal representative, Advocate Tembeka Ngcukaitobi, argues that those disputing his crowning are undermining culture and customs. A faction in the family wants Prince Zulu to be the king. The matter is being heard at the Supreme Court of Appeal in Bloemfontein. Let's now discuss this with cultural expert Professor Musa Xulu, as well as legal expert Mpumelelo Zikalala. A very good morning to both of you, and thank you so much for making time for us. Mpumelelo, I'm going to start off with you. Off what Advocate Ngcukaitobi had to say on behalf of King Misuzulu is that there was a meeting that took place on the 14th of May 2021. That meeting was disputed. It went to Judge Madondo. Judge Madondo then dealt with this matter and found that the meeting was legally constituted. Therefore, there was no appeal against that particular judgment, which means that that judgment stays and that meeting remains lawful. What's your interpretation of the arguments that he has put forward and also the arguments against that assertion?
Well, good morning to you, also to Xulu and the viewers. Well, that's precisely what the president is arguing, and it seems to be a cordial and a well-written argument to then say, this matter has been in the courts before, whether you were an interested party or an integral party, but at the end of the day, your name was mentioned as one of the people that were there in court being able to listen. So if there's an adverse judgment that has been taken against you, then it falls upon you to go back to the same court, to the same presiding officer or judge, and say to them, you've taken a decision that has an impact on me, hence I want to dispute it based on the following reasons that are there. If you leave it lying there, you don't take it on appeal, that ruling remains there because it's the judgment on its own. Hence the principle of res judicata is being raised time and again in court to say, well, this matter has been dealt with. If you're now asking this court or the previous court that sat in Pretoria to deal with it again, you are asking the court to rule on the same matter, same facts, same individuals, but they're getting a second part of the chair. I think that's one argument in which maybe the other side was not able to deal with adequately, to say, why didn't you follow up that, despite the fact that you have some reasons that may be there, whether custom was followed or not, or whether the meeting was constituted properly or not. But at the end of the day, you can't take away that decision in this matter has already been taken. And in order for you to fight that, you're supposed to fight it within that particular forum, which is within the KZN division.
Yeah, and just quickly before I go to Professor Xulu, is the letter that was sent to the president enough, though, to indicate that there was a dispute, and as the High Court has ruled, that therefore the president should have then set up a commission or a committee that will look into that dispute?
Well, upon hearing the submissions that were made by the counsel for Princess Margaret, one could come to an understanding to say that the letter was a bit comprehensive enough. It's not just a 1 or 2 page letter. It contained provisions that were there that suggested something may have been amiss. But despite the letter being there, remember, you can't whisk away the order that has been made by the court. So if, as the president is sitting, which of the two would take precedent? The letter that has been submitted or a court order that says the process that has been made in order to recognize Cyril Misuzulu is the one that should suffice. If I was sitting there as the president, I would have taken the court order because it takes precedent. So what should have been followed in terms of procedure is whoever has a dispute, go back to the KZN division, file your appeal or file your review if you think something untoward may have taken place, and say, remove this embargo or this gagging order that you've given to me because I want to make sure that I file my proper application to the president. So even if it was a letter which is comprehensive enough, but you can't whisk it away or look at it only within that eyes because there's a court order that is pronounced on the matter.
Okay. Professor Xulu, the recognition and identification process of the heir to the throne in that meeting that took place, the dispute that is also being put to the fore is that it was not properly constituted and it was disguised as another meeting where, in actual fact, Prince Mangosuthu, the Prime Minister at the time, turned that meeting into an identification of a successor meeting, which it was not supposed to. Ordinarily, what do customs say once that meeting is formed and how that meeting should be formed?
Well, thank you, Aldrin, and thank you to Baba Zikalala. The The issue that is at stake there is that there were people that are not members of the Zulu royal family who sat there, signed the register, and then a decision was taken to nominate Prince Dan Misuzulu to be the next king. And then, of course, customarily, and in many, not just among the Zulus, it is members of the royal family that decide, that sit there and decide who becomes the next. It does not happen on its own. I can tell you why. It's because also, if you were to use a different way of motivation, for example, Prince Magade says he's the eldest son. He can go back to even how Shaka became king and look at many others that were the eldest and did not necessarily come from other mothers of coming from other royal families. So he can still argue his case based on that customarily, that as the eldest son, he also has to be heard in terms of nomination to be king. And then, of course, the other motivation that was used by Prince Mangosuthu that says that if there is a wife that comes from another royal family, she automatically gives birth to the next king, is also valid. The problem with customs is that they should be based on repeated action over a long period of time and then get used in that way as traditions. But if you look at the Zulu kings, they've all come to the throne in different ways over many years. Let me say from 1816 when Shaka came to power. Now, if they dispute and say that the people that were sitting in that meeting were not members of the royal family, they may have a point there. And I fear that maybe from a customs point of view, that point may stick. And if it sticks, then, of course, the court could judge differently from the expectations.
Yeah, and just quickly, Professor Xulu, when we read Judge Madondo's assertion around the legality of that meeting, even though it had members, or even though it had attendees who are not members of the royal family, how should we understand his interpretation of customs?
Well, his interpretation of customs was that as long as there are people and there is evidence that there were people, it doesn't work like that. For example, in the case of King Dingane, it was Princess Mkabayi who assembled the Zulu royal family to decide who was going to be the next king after the death of Shaka. And then, of course, that's why King Dingane was appointed by the Zulu royal family. That sticks. And then you will have a situation also, let me say, with King Solomon, who also had to go through similar situations, although there were disputes. So you will find that centrally, members of the Zulu royal family do have a final say on who becomes king and who doesn't. And the subjects receive what they are told by the leadership of the Zulu royal family. I'm saying that is one point in as far as those presentations that were done over the past 2 days were concerned, that could stick and create some problems.
All right. And in conclusion, this is a question now to both of you, considering that we're speaking about cultural customs and also looking at what the law says. Is it possible to be king without the recognition of the president of the country? Let's start off with you, Mpumelelo.
Yes, it is possible. But remember, a king is not appointed by the president. The president only facilitates the recognition of the king through the Traditional and Coastal Leadership Act, which would be based on what the family has stated. So whether the president is recognized or not, it's not going to take away your customary right in order for you to do that. Hence why this act was then enacted, to then say the president is going to be advised by the family who they want to appoint as that particular individual to be there on the customs and traditions which are not really codified, which is why you are here today and asking the court to rule on this one. So yes, you can be king without the traditional, without the court, president recognizing you, but the consequences of that are that the financial contribution or the support that you would have received now can't be given to you because there's no way in which you're going to suffice the applicable legislation. For example, the PFMA, in order for you to be given security, for residences to be finished, so on and so forth. But in terms of customs, yes, you can be king without the president recognizing you.
Okay, Professor Xulu, your bite on that?
Yes, no, true. I fully agree with Mpumelelo. You can be, and as I say, if that point sticks, then maybe the president will still have to appeal to the Constitutional Court, because then it means that all these benefits that King Misuzulu is having now will be taken away if that happens.